We're actually going to buy this yard for $1 million. We're going to develop it for roughly about $400,000. We would get roughly around 140 truck parking spaces on there. That's roughly about $30,000 a month in cash flow on a $1.4 million investment. Here in California, if you buy a $1.4 million home, you're never going to get $30,000 a month in cash flow.
All right. Welcome to another episode of the Agent to Investor podcast, where we talk about the agent side of real estate investing. We'll be talking about the successes, the failures, and all in between. My name is Nico Garcia, local real estate agent and investor based out of Montgomery County, Maryland. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host.
I'm Anna Bialik, Northern Virginia realtor and mostly out-of-state investor. And today, excuse me, I'm going through puberty apparently. We have another guest, another amazing guest. I got to meet him at BPCon this past year in Vegas. We have a mutual friend of ours who's also been on the podcast in the past. Davis is a mutual friend. So we have Kyle Wegg, who's an investor. He's like out-of-state investing, like industrial investing, residential investing, international investing. I mean, I don't know. I can go on and on, but I'm not going to do it justice. So I'm going to turn over the mic to Kyle, and we'll start with you and ask you to share your story about how you got into real estate investing. Like, what's your background? How'd you get to where you are now? What brought you to investing?
Yeah, hi there. I'm Kyle. Nice to meet you guys. I'm super stoked to be on the pod. It's really amazing meeting you at BPCon. And I always say to people too, like, go to real estate conferences. Like, you'll just meet the most incredible people. You'll expand your network, and you never know who you're going to meet next. And I've met so many incredible people at different conferences. And with that though, again, I'm originally from the south side of Chicago. People always like to hear I don't want to call it the rags to riches story, but I definitely come from, just a crazy background. Like, I never went to school. I got expelled, twice from two schools, back in, when I was in freshman, junior year. Ended up just doing a bunch of bad things and put myself in jail at one point, and then eventually moved out to Southern California. And I always joke, I moved out to California with $2,000 in my grand dam with absolutely no plan. And I worked, a bunch of different jobs. I've always been an entrepreneur. So I started my first company, which was a freight brokering business back when I was 22, 23 years old. Ended up, sometimes I say I sold it, but honestly, I didn't sell it. I ran it into the ground. And I basically, I made a lot of money as a young kid, ran my business to the ground, left California. I traveled the world for 4 years, went to 28 different countries, did everything I ever wanted to do. Eventually, 1 year after Burning Man up in, Northern California, I ended up on a cannabis farm. And I noticed a guy that actually owned the cannabis farm. He was obviously like making all this money and stuff. And I was kind of in this position of, what am I going to do next with my life? I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always been really good at attracting abundance in a sense. And I just decided to stay up in Northern California. I learned to grow cannabis, but I realized that I didn't want to be the one actually growing the plants. Like, I saw how much money the guy was making actually owning the property. So, a couple of years later, I bought my first property. I bought my second property. I bought my third property. I had 3 cannabis farms at one point. We were growing, a few thousand pounds worth of weed. Honestly, there was a few $1 million in cash going through my house, like literally every few months at a time. And it kind of changed my life. And actually my buddy at the time that I was doing all the weed stuff, like, my buddy put me on the Bigger Pockets. And, so I started listening to Bigger Pockets like religiously. What the heck? I think I listened to Bigger Pockets for like 2 years straight, like everything from the first episode all the way up to the 300th episode. And I realized that you could do these things called cash out refinances. So I'm like, oh shit, like, you can actually pull equity out of your properties. And buying properties up here in Northern California, we've had a lot of great appreciation. So I did my first cash out refinance on one of my properties. And I got close to $100,000 back. I was like, wow, like, this is freaking cool. This is amazing. And so I started to understand real estate investing a little bit better. And I finally, at one point, I realized that, cannabis was not going to last forever. I would always tell my wife this, like, this stuff, like, life comes in seasons. You have your summer, springs, falls, and everything. And I knew that making money with cannabis at the time, again, that was our summer, but it was not going to last forever. So I just dove deeper into real estate. I bought my first property, my first fixer, actually with Bitcoin. And I always like to share the story too. I remember a mortgage broker I was working with. he sent me over to his fixer, and there's like 5 or 6 other guys looking at this property. And I asked like the seller, I said, what are you going to do with your equity? He goes, oh, well, I'm going to buy Bitcoin. And I'm like, well, I'm a Bitcoiner too. So I called him up after I left the property. I said, hey, bro, like, let's go have coffee. Let's figure something out or whatever. And basically we worked out a deal where I paid him, I think it was like $60,000 in Bitcoin, and he did an owner carry. I was able to obtain the property, and then I took some of my cannabis, money. I paid $140,000 to my contractors, and I bought the property for $300K. Put the $60K down, got a hard money loan, and then put $140K into the rehab, and I actually appraised for $619. And so basically, when I did my cash out refinance, I got a check that for $246,000 back, and that was like my first like real experience buying real estate, and that was a perfect BURR. I actually made money on the property.
Yeah, you did a crypto BURR. I don't think we've had a Bitcoin BURR. That's pretty cool. You can coin that yourself.
Yeah, so with that money, I went out and just bought 2 more properties, and just realized that real estate was the way. And I kind of like I remember reading the book Who Not How, and I just realized like how like I just had to continue to just delegate tasks. I literally delegated all my cannabis farm tasks to all my workers. I just went full on real estate.
I don't even know where to start with this.
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like you had a lot of experience as an entrepreneur. Like, where did that start? What made you? Did you have parents that embedded that into you when you were young, or?
Great question, man. The complete opposite. So, I mean, my dad was a construction worker. My mom, she was a hairdresser. And honestly, like, I come from like a very dysfunctional background where, my dad ended up moving to Arkansas, like where the KKK was. My mom ended up moving in with like another man. So I kind of grew up on the streets. And I mean, kind of by choice, I had an option to move in with my aunts and just, do better. But ultimately, I always, I was really big into hip hop. I think with like hip hop and always wanting nice things and, nice watches and rims and all that stuff. There's the kind of like a joke too, where, like you're either the drug user or the drug dealer. And honestly, I just like money more. So I just chose not to become a drug addict, and most people I knew growing up have now all died of like fentanyl or, and whatnot. So, yeah. So yeah, I just, and I've never watched the show Shameless before, but everyone always says, oh, like, like the show Shameless, it really reminds me of your story. Because like Southside Chicago, people are super scrappy. I mean, we used to scam movie theaters as kids. Like, I mean, we'd go and like, whatever, steal cars in the west suburbs. I mean, we did all types of crazy stuff. So I think like my entrepreneurial spirit started at a very, young age. I would just try to sell anything I could get my hands on. And then when I moved out to California, what was it? Yeah, man, I was working like 3 different jobs, just trying to figure it all out, like a young kid, just couldn't barely afford my rent. And I got recruited by a guy who actually like he had a freight brokering business. And Jim, his name was. I realized basically after a few months of working for him, he wasn't paying me enough. I literally started my own business in my kitchen in Long Beach. Within, I don't know, I'd say like a year and a half or so, like I was making 6 figures. Like, I mean, there's points like, back in the early 2000s, I was grossing over $1 million in actual gross revenue, and I was making a couple $100,000 as a young kid. It just completely changed my life. And then, actually another, story I like to share as well too. When I lived in LA, I got recruited for a MLM, multi-level marketing company. And actually, like Hunter Gray, that he was like a Harvard or Yale graduate. I've never met anybody in my life that went to college, coming from Chicago. He pulled me into an MLM company. And sure enough, actually, his mentor was Jim Rohn. And so actually, like, I didn't know who Jim Rohn was at the time. And like, we would actually get to see Jim Rohn speak. Like, I got to shake his hand. And I remember both Hunter and actually my accountability partner, Dan, his name was, from Boston. They each gave me a freaking Jim Rohn CD. I listened to it religiously for about, I would say almost 2 years straight. I drove around LA, starting my business, listening to Jim Rohn. And honestly, it just completely changed my life. And I started going to the conferences, the Rich Dad, Poor Dad stuff. The thing was I always had this stuff inside me, but I didn't really know how to, coming from Chicago, I didn't really know how to transmute it into something more positive in a sense. And then like once I started understanding personal development, it just completely changed my life. Everything changed. I just understood business and just how to deal with people and philosophy and money and just life.
It sounds like you were entrepreneurial, at least in the beginning, by necessity. Like it sounds like you didn't really have a support system growing up. So you kind of had to figure out how to get by just because you needed to survive. And then I will say, I know lots of people knock MLMs. My husband is one of them because I may or may not have fallen for like the whole Mary Kay thing at some point or whatever. But I will say there is some like all the MLMs I've ever known people to be a part of or been a part of myself, there's always this personal development aspect to most of them, which I will say was life-changing for me as well. I didn't get rich off of selling mascara, but it's interesting to hear you say how an MLM, which most people think is negative, actually did have a positive impact on your life and like shifted pretty much like the trajectory of how you were looking at things.
Absolutely. I mean, like, you know, it's like going to college without going to college. I mean, for like, you know, I didn't make any money with MLM either. Like, I mean, I probably made, I don't know, maybe a few $100 or whatever, but yeah, I developed a lot of great friendships. And again, like, you know, Jim Rohn was my first mentor, and like Jim Rohn was actually Tony Robbins' mentor. And I didn't know any of this stuff when it was all happening. I was like, oh, like, you know, profits are better than wages, and learn to work harder on yourself than you do at your job. And like, all this stuff was just like so mind blowing to me. Like in my 20s, I'm like, oh my God, like this is amazing. Like, you know, like how can I put this in the action now? And I look back on that, I'm like, man, it completely changed my life.
Jim Rohn is one of the OGs for sure. And I want to piggyback on what Anna said. Most of those multi-level, they spend a lot of money on, you know, self-development and, you know, educating sales and things like that. So there are some great tools that you can get out of being in rooms with motivational speakers and things like that. So I did want to circle back though, Kyle, because I know you have a very unique way in getting starting into the actual real estate with, you know, getting creative with that deal. Talk to me about like how you structure that. I mean, what did you know about real estate? How did you first buy that property? I know you mentioned you used some Bitcoin and things like that. Did you know, or did you kind of just dive deep?
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, I mean, again, that's a great question. And, you know, like I only had experience like buying cannabis farms at the time. So, you know, and actually I remember when I was learning about wellness, my whole goal was just to buy another farm where I could build greenhouses. And the truth is you know, and if I broke down the numbers, like, okay, if I had so many greenhouses, you grow so many pounds, you're going to make this much money or whatever. So that was actually where my mindset was at. And, you know, again, like, you know, I had 3 farms at the time where I'm like, okay, like this farm's making me $200,000. This one's making me whatever. I'm like, wow, I'm going to make just shy of $1 million. So that's where my first mindset was always at. But then I realized again, it wasn't sustainable. And I had this feeling because now the cannabis market's completely crashed. And I knew it was going to happen. Like, I just knew it because like good things just don't last forever. I would love to think that, but however, it's just like the reality is, it's just like you just can't have a summer forever. And so anyways, I rode that wave, which was great. But then again, like that first property that I bought, specifically, I remember like, you know, people always talking about like owner finance and owner carries and all this stuff. I never did an owner carry before. And as soon as the guy, like, he said, like, you know, or what I learned from Pace Morby was like, hey, like, you know, find out like what their pain points are or whatever. And I think there's something else that, you know, that he really pushes. But regardless, I'm like, all right, like, what are you going to do with your equity now? What are you going to spend your money on? And he's like, I'm going to buy Bitcoin. I'm like, great, bro. I'm a Bitcoin guy. I can solve your problem, you know? And we just worked out a deal where I literally paid him in Bitcoin. He carried the loan for $240,000. And then having, you know, straight up having weed money, I had all the like shoeboxes full of cash. I could literally pay my freaking contractors with, you know, with cash. And every contractor where I live, dude, they all want cash. Everybody wants cash. So that's just what we did. You know, I spent $140,000 on the rehab. This place was a freaking nightmare too. Like, I mean, he had trash everywhere. Like, you know, like it was like the ugliest house in the block. There's just siding hanging off. I mean, spent $140K on a freaking rehab. I like siding on the inside, everything on the like a full gut, or siding on the outside, full gut on the inside. And no, it's crazy though. Actually, the seller, he's still my friend to this day. I've actually bought another property from him. I wholesale one of his properties, and actually I'm doing did one refinance on one of his loans for my mortgage brokering business, and I'm soon to do a second loan for him. So like, not only did I actually get like, I don't know, I don't know how much money, but I made 6 figures on his first property. I developed a relationship with him. We're still friends to this day, and we still continue to do business together.
Wow.
I do. Yeah, I do hear people, if you do like owner financing or sell a carryback, you're in a relationship with them for whatever time, whether they're 5 years, 10 years, and you're in constant communication. So I think that is common. But Kyle, that first property, I know you mentioned it was a big rehab, 140,000. Was this strictly as like a flip, or did you fix it and keep it as a rental? What did that look like?
I think
Yes, I bird it, dude. I bird it,
Sounds
and
bird.
yeah, and what my mortgage is like 20 and some change, and right now I split it into a legal 2 unit, and I get
Nice.
2150 on the bottom. 2150 on the bottom unit, and 1400 on the 1450 on the top unit. So I collect about $3,600 in rent. I think that is. Correct me if I'm wrong. Dirty is about $2,800 mortgage, so I make $500-600 a month or so, give or take, and it's a great income producing property. I have great tenants in there right now. I'm going to hold the property for a long time. And the truth is I have, having California real estate, there's a lot of equity in the property as well too. And, probably got, $250,000 or something in it now. And yeah, and that was actually before COVID, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So now it's even
yeah,
higher.
totally. So, California for the win. BURRs for the win, Bitcoin for the win. I can laugh at myself. Some people are like, I don't know, Bitcoin is probably like 20,000 a coin or something. So I spent 3 Bitcoin on it, like at its current price. And the joke is I've been a Bitcoiner for a while where, I probably could just do nothing and just hold my Bitcoin. I'd probably be a lot wealthier without all the problems. But ultimately, I still fucking love real estate though.
Yeah, it's the chasing the deals and stuff. So I'm going to ask one more question about this first deal. So you said, or a couple questions. So you said that you had not done this before. You had heard people talking about seller finance. So how did that, did you have somebody you went to and was like, hey, how do you structure this? Did you have an attorney? How did you tactically lay that out without having experience? And how long ago was that? Because you mentioned Pace Morby, who's been in the game for a while, but I think he's recently become more popular in the last, 5 years, 10 years, maybe.
Probably.
So how long ago was it? And how did you tactically do that? Who'd you go to get your stuff done?
I want to say, because I got into real estate around 2020, 2020, maybe in 2021. So it wasn't too long ago. A couple years before COVID. I forget the whole COVID time, but it was a little bit before COVID. Because I remember when I was buying, my first, cannabis properties, even this property, we weren't fully into that big bull market that we had. But yeah, I just, maybe it wasn't Pace specifically at that time, but I was listening to a lot of Bigger Pockets podcasts. And again, when I first started learning about real estate, I literally listened to Bigger Pockets religiously, listening to Brandon and, David Green, or just that's all I did. Just listen to Bigger Pockets all the time. So, it was just kind of all the stuff I was listening to after 300 episodes, putting into action. And then even as far as structuring the owner carry, coincidentally, Kwong, his name is the seller. He actually just he's done a lot of weird creative things. He goes, oh, I gotta die. And he's basically a real estate attorney. And we literally paid him $1,000 or something between both of us. And he wrote up all the paperwork and whatnot. And we did go through title. But that was it. It was $1,000 and we split it 50-50 and we made it work.
So talk to us, Kyle. You mentioned, you started with these warehouse or these cannabis farm warehouses. So how does that differentiate from, what you ended up doing with the residential BURR? And how is it kind of similar? Having that experience definitely could be beneficial, right?
Yeah. So I'm not originally from Northern California. And when I ended up here, a little over 10 years ago, there's a whole culture, everybody in Northern California is growing cannabis, everybody, even the most straight, narrow people, there's, police officers and sheriffs. And even my neighbor, he was a preacher and an ex-sheriff who owned a security company. He's growing weed. And so it's just everyone is growing weed up here. And to me, I was just blown away. I'm like, oh, this is the culture in Northern California. Luckily I picked a place, Grass Valley, Nevada City, which I used to always call Santa Monica, the cannabis industry. It's all high class hippies. It was more boutique farms and stuff. So the real estate that I bought was actually desirable. Everything's, within 5 or 10 minutes from town or so. What else? A lot of Bay Area money's has come out here since then. We're close to Tahoe and whatnot. So like the real estate is actually super desirable. On top of that, we have like Humboldt County, Trinidad, what else? Mendocino and stuff. Like that's like the big leagues of the cannabis business, like that 50, 100, 150 acre properties and stuff in the middle of nowhere. Here, like I basically bought, actually all three of my properties are 5 acres, 5 acres, and 8 acres. So they're not massive properties and they're closer to the town as well too. I bought, my neighbor's house, which was a cannabis farm too, for $740,000 or something at the time. And we just threw a bunch of greenhouses on there. The house is worth $1 million now. So,
Wow.
so I made money buying the right properties and just simply growing weed on them. We built a bunch of greenhouses and all that stuff and just produced. But outside that, once my property values went up by nothing that I actually, did myself, I did my cash out refinances when interest rates went really low. I got 3% interest rates on all my old weed properties. Now they all actually rent and they all, produce income. I've got equity inside there and, it's California real estate. So I'm just going to hold them for as long as I can.
Okay. So what is okay, so that's the farms, your first flip. What does your portfolio look like now?
Yeah, so I have something around 13 properties. As I mentioned, this is, what I like to share and also encourage people to go to conferences. So maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I went to a Bigger Pockets conference in New Orleans, and that was actually during COVID. And I met my partner, Deontay, and he lives in Norfolk, Virginia. And, I'm your typical California guy that had money at the time and all this stuff. And then, he, lived in maybe like a B- C+ neighborhood in Norfolk, Virginia, born and raised there. And, like most importantly, wherever you invest, you want to have a competitive advantage. And so Deontay, he worked a normal government job, lived in Norfolk, Virginia, and he wanted to scale, his business. And ultimately, like I'm a California investor who didn't want to buy, $750,000 properties, by me. So we decided to partner. And sure enough, me and him, we bought and sold maybe close to like a dozen properties together. We have literally a mixed bag of Section 8. We have, Section 8 properties. We have one midterm rental. We've done flips together. We got standard rentals and stuff. And yeah, we just, been doing the thing out there. And ultimately, like the properties in Norfolk, we bought between $70,000 to $120,000. We put anywhere from 60 to 80K into them. They typically appraise for like the mid 200s or so. And then we just rinse and repeat. I don't think I got into my whole Thailand story, but, I kind of set myself back a little bit, even with him and what I was doing in America for a bit, because I was out in Thailand for 2 years, attempting to build a villa. So, we just recently moved back to America. And so now we're like back getting into the whole real estate game again.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about the Thailand experience because I know I'm very interested about it. But I'd love to talk about this partnership because I love what you talk about saying having you want to have a competitive advantage in any market and using somebody who's boots on the ground that you met at a conference. I think partnerships are such a powerful way to help scale. It could be a win-win for not only your business but his business as well. So how did that look? I know you guys bought a few and you're in midterm flips and buying fix and holds and things like that. But how did you structure that? A lot of people are hesitant to get into business with somebody, especially somebody that they don't know for years. So what does it look like? Are you guys going 50-50? I know you mentioned he has a good job as well. Are you using him for the financing round or?
Yeah. So pretty straight up, like, what the heck? So we have an agreement basically that I fund everything and then he does all the sweat equity, but he's not doing the physical labor. Like he's just managing the contractors and, picking material and whatnot. And we have an agreement where we do split everything 50-50, but ultimately in our operating agreement, it actually says like, once I'm fully paid back all my money, then we become 50-50 partners. So, typically when we buy a property, we've had some deals not go good. We've had some deals where I left a little bit of money inside there. We've had some other deals that went great as well too. But ultimately, like once I'm fully paid back, then we become 50-50 partners in on the deal. So, typically, I bought a few properties out there, just all cash. I bought a house for $70,000, which, coming from California just seems unheard of. So I just, I bought that one all cash and, just fully funded it myself, which, and actually like that one went really, really well. We bought in Suffolk, Virginia. And again, 70K purchase price. We put 60, 70K into it. It appraised for 240, like $100,000 in new equity. We kept that our cash out refinance. We did a full BURR. Now we Section 8 it. I think our mortgage is like 12 and some change, and we rented for 1650. And
Wow.
so, yeah, that was a great one. We've done a few, where we bought houses, around like 110, 120 or so. Again, 60K rehabs, appraised for 240, 280. And now we're just rentals, and then we had one specifically, I don't know Norfolk that well, but one house that we bought is like right across the street from I think the largest African-American college. And so we turned that into a midterm rental where we rent out to, just like a lot of like students and students' families and whatnot. And it was supposed to be for the traveling nurses and military people, but ultimately he's just found like a different market for it. And, it's doing this thing.
So I know you're in California and is in Virginia. I'm in Maryland, and I can totally relate to, trying to get outside of my local market to start doing some investing. And it sounds like, you met this gentleman at a bigger conference and build a good relationship. But what kind of, did you do any research on these markets in Norfolk before you actually, pulled the trigger? Or was it more just like, hey, I'm relying on this guy and he has a lot of experience in the area? What type of things were you doing before you actually went?
Yeah. I mean, another great question, man. So, I mean, the truth is, I didn't know anything about Norfolk, Virginia. I've never been to Virginia. I still have never been to Virginia. So I know, nothing about it. But when me and Deontay met, like we left the conference, like he gave me a call a few weeks later. I never actually thought I was going to partner with him. Like when you meet people at conferences, you bro out, you share some stories and whatnot. And he told me straight up, he was like, hey, dude, I got, like 6 or 7 properties here right now. Like I want to start scaling, there's this opportunity for this other property, like down the street that I live on. And so he sent me the deal. I looked at it. So let's do it. Let's go for it, man. And, I know my personality, I'm a very high risk taker. So that's why you'll hear a lot about like really big wins and really big losses. I'm not, I'm not a conservative investor. Like I go big, I go hard, like it's just my personality. And so like, yeah, we did well on our first one. I said, well, let's do another one, and then we did another one. And we just, like I said, I think we bought and sold about 12 or 13 properties between both of us, together. And it's, it's gone great. Yeah, we've had our, kind of like couple of houses we didn't go that well, which we ended up having to flip for a very small profit. I think one we even took a loss on before, but then ultimately, we do have our performing rentals as well too. And the partnerships were great. And I actually just stay on the partnership subject. We were just at, actually I went to Brandon Turner's conference in Austin, Texas. And I met a guy, super cool guy that lives in Kenton, Ohio. And we're about to do our first deal together pretty soon. And he's in another market where you can buy houses for 110K or so. And he's got something like 30 plus houses right now. All his money's all tied up. We've been talking on the phone. He's been shooting deals over. And we're about to actually start putting some offers on some properties in Kenton.
Nice. And I'm so sorry. I have one final question on this. So, roles reversed and, you're Deontay, I think his name is Deontay.
Yeah.
What are some things that you would look for as, essentially you're the equity partner, the money guy. What are some things that people that are in his shoes could do to make it very easy on somebody like you? Like, is there, I know they're sending deals to you, but do you like a certain way, any specific things that you would be looking for?
I mean, honestly, like first thing is experience. I mean, like I probably wouldn't want to work with somebody that isn't experienced. And two, like what comes to mind is like just people that are involved in the culture of like real estate investing. I think like to me, that's super important that, they listen to the podcast, they are taking action, they're involved, where I'd be a little bit more hesitant on like a new investor, and not to discourage any new investors, but for me personally, I'd rather like hear about somebody who's already bought and sold, whatever, so many houses, and they understand the whole process. They have their team set up. Both, Deontay and, potential partner Q that lives out in Kenton, like they have experience, they have properties, like they have their contractors, they have their team set up. They speak the language. They show up to the event. They, they're involved in the culture of it. So, I think that's to me very, very important. Just to have some type of like background, in investing. But again, I wouldn't want to discourage anybody who's a newbie not to approach people to raise money or look, for your next deal. But as far as myself though, like I definitely, 'cause I like growing out with people. Like I like, I definitely like, coming from Chicago and stuff, dude. I like to, just shoot the shit, talk about stuff. Just like, it doesn't have to always be realistic and everything. So I mean, it definitely, you need to, have a good, I don't know, like you need to build a friendship with them.
Yeah. And have a vibe. Have a vibe.
Yeah, have a vibe.
And
I enjoy talking to all my partners. I own a couple other properties here locally, with partners. Like one of my cannabis farms that we bought was with the partner. And yeah, like we're good buddies. Like we're super good buddies. And like we bro out all the time. And I love it.
yeah. And I think a credibility package, we talked about this in a few episodes back, but, if you have an actual package that shows I agree with you, Kyle, like experience is very important. And if you're newer and you don't have that, maybe, lean on somebody that does. But having that in like an actual file that you could send out to somebody is very helpful. So I'll let Anna ask your questions because I feel like I've been hogging all the questions.
Oh, no. I think you actually asked the question, which was kind of like, what do you look for in a partner? Like what made you decide that person was the right one? So you kind of already answered the question or asked the question. So now I was just going to say for those newbies, like maybe you don't have the experience, but even if you just go to these conferences and surround yourself with these people, like, because I look at that too. If they're actually putting money in, like maybe they don't have the experience, but if they're putting money in to go to these conferences and actually try to educate themselves, I think that at least gives them like they're headed in the right direction. They're not just listening to a podcast and saying like, oh, I can go make $1 million and start kicking tires. They're actually putting their money where their mouth is. So for those newbies, sorry, experience does matter, especially when you're a risk taker like Kyle. So I understand why you're doing it. You like to take big risks, but you do it. There's some calculation behind it. You want to make sure the person that you're partnering with can carry their weight in the deal. So I get it. I don't know where I was going with that, but I made a point. Go to conferences.
Yeah. Well, so, again, like, I used the word culture before and like diving into the culture of like real estate, and I think there's people that, even if you are a newbie, but you're like constantly like you're listening to the podcast and, talking to lenders and like you're actively looking for deals and stuff, like, not just, I've had people pitch me deals I grew up with in Chicago and they're like, oh, there's this property down here. And honestly, I wouldn't give them a dime and I wouldn't trust them, like maybe it is a deal or whatever, but it's just, I wouldn't do it, as I don't feel that they're fully involved. And like, there is this whole like kind of culture of real estate investors, that we know, like we know all the big people on, social media, like, we know what everyone's kind of doing. They again, I'll just use the word culture. And I feel that people are involved in a culture, like they're motivated, they understand, real estate in a sense. I probably wouldn't invest with anybody that's kind of outside that culture. So I don't know if that's a good way to explain it, but yeah, that's, kind of what my 2 cents is.
It is. We've talked about that before. Like I've said it, like Brian and I, my husband and I, our friend group has shifted over the last few years since we became real estate investors. We still love our old friends that are not real estate investors, but it's just, we don't have as much to talk about. We don't have as much in common. We don't have like our goals are different. Like a lot of people that aren't in real estate investing think that we're crazy or that real estate investing is just for rich people. And so sometimes it's just easier to hang out with people that are part of the culture because they understand.
Totally. 100%, 150%.
So Kyle, I know you talked about how you scaled nationally and I think it's cool that you were able to go outside of your local market. And now I'd love to shift to going outside of our actual country and how you decided to, I know you started the process of going to Thailand and creating, you went really deep into it. And talk to us why you did that and what that project was.
Yeah, man. So, I mean, I could tell a lot of stories around this, but, so as I shared, I spent 4 years traveling around the world in a backpack, and I always, then forgive my language, but I call it the unfucking of myself. I spent a lot of time in like, ashrams and monasteries, and like, I was down in Peru drinking, plant medicine. I was in India for a year. Just I was with all the saints, sadhus, gurus, babas, swamis and stuff out there. So I did a lot of like, spiritual travel in a sense. And I've always just loved Thailand. Thailand was always just like this super peaceful country. It's got all this, beautiful nature. And yeah, I just always loved Thailand. And even as I was doing the cannabis thing, like, with cannabis, like, you have your season, then you harvest, and basically in the wintertime, like I'm not a cold weather person, and I would always go out to Thailand. So, I mean, basically in those years of doing that, one winter time, I ended up meeting my wife out there. My wife is Polish German. She's not Thai. But we met out in Thailand. And, I mean, this is now probably like 15 years of me traveling back and forth to Thailand. And, but I met her out there. She's a yoga teacher, super awesome. We conceived our daughter. We ended up birthing her in Thailand. So my daughter was actually born on an island in Thailand. We have a lot of great friends, great community. Like, it's not like, it wasn't just some random thought to go to Thailand. I mean, I even studied Thai language for well over a year. Like, I can speak level 1, level 2 Thai. Like I understand the culture quite well. Anyways, when COVID happened, we moved back here from Thailand specifically. Our story is a little complicated sometimes. Even some of the timelines I can't even understand, because like I was bouncing between, having my wheat farms out here, and then, like they were basically working for me passively. And then I was out in Thailand, basically just living my best life. And again, birthed our daughter in Thailand. COVID hit, we moved back to America. And then during COVID, like I decided to actually purchase a plot of land. And I actually purchased it with Bitcoin, which was, I'm a Bitcoiner again. So I bought it with Bitcoin. One of my Russian buddies, like he found this plot of land, and he goes, "Hey dude, we can get this for," I think it was like $100,000 US or something, which literally the property doubled in appreciation after COVID. So we did make money on the actual land itself. But I bought this land, and then as we were like kind of doing the weed thing here, everything was starting to shift after COVID. Prices were starting to crash and everything. I was actually crushing with real estate. That's when I was doing my partnership again with my partner in Virginia. I was buying properties here, but high risk Kyle, like let's go to fucking Thailand and let's go build a villa. So, I basically like just uprooted our family, and we flew out to Thailand with our, 2 cats, a dog, at the time, like a 2-year-old, and my wife, and we went out to Thailand to, go build a house or go build a villa out there. Well, as soon as I got out there, I got super inspired. I bought another plot of land out there with Bitcoin. I think that was like $160,000 or so. And this was like right behind an elephant sanctuary, just like amazing freaking location. Look right down on the elephants and stuff. It's like at the end of a dirt road, super awesome. Long story short, I have a lot of friends that were like doing like, development in a sense out there. And I got a reference to work with this one specific, contractor or builder. And straight up, without getting into all the details, like he ended up running a builder Ponzi scheme. And, he collected over $1.7 million of people's money, gave them a little over $100,000 deposit. He was supposed to build me 2 small rentals on the first plot of land that I bought. And supposed to build me 2 rentals there, which I was actually going to like build Airbnbs there. And then the land by the elephant sanctuary, I was going to build like a 3,500, 4,000 square foot villa for us. And so I had everything. I literally like learned how to do architecture, and like I got all the permits. I literally did everything you could do to learn about how to build villas out there, but I've just caught up with the wrong freaking guy. And I literally waited the whole year of my life. The guy, left the country, ran off with $1.7 million of people's money, I think the biggest lesson though, even as all that stuff was happening, like, I don't want to use the word extorted, but like, Thailand is a very nationalist country. And the thing is you're always going to be a second class citizen there. And I had to like truly experience that, because like every time you want to get something done, you have to pay somebody. Every time, like you need to get a permit, you wait 1 year, or you pay the guy, a few $1,000s, he comes tomorrow. Like there's just so much, I know everything's so backwards there. And I literally thought I was like set up for him. Like, oh, I'm from Chicago. Like, dude, I was in the weed game. Like, like I just, I've lived a very unconventional life, and I'm like, I'm so ready for Thailand. And honestly, I just got my ass kicked all the time. I just, even the neighbor would like extorted me for like $5,500 because he never put the servitude or like the legal access to my land on his freaking, when he sold me the land. He goes, "Oh no, you still need to pay me $5,500. I'm like, what are you talking about, bro? I feel like they just keep poking you. And so, I just decided that, I just told my wife, I'm like, I just can't exist in a society where I'm a second class citizen. Again, like we were crushing it in real estate before we left. Like I understand like, yeah, I'm not into all the politics and stuff here, but I'm just like, man, I'm like, the system is set up for me. I understand the language. I understand the culture. Like, I can read the contracts. I know the gray areas. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
understand everything here. I can leverage that. I can do so much like more here than in Thailand. And I said, fuck it. Like, I'm selling everything. I just sold all my land. And we just uprooted our family back here a year ago.
Yeah. Well, Kyle, thanks for sharing. I mean, we talk about the successes all the time, but your learning lessons are really where you learn the most, right? And I can vouch for you, Kyle. I've been to Thailand. I love it there. It's beautiful. The people are generally nice, and it's more inexpensive to live out there versus here. So I can totally relate to why you wanted to start this business and your villas over there. I did want to talk specifically. I know you didn't actually end up, building a villa, but out of people that I know that want to invest in real estate out of the country, the financing's a little bit different, right? Here you can work with a builder and you can finance most of the construction. Whereas, if you do it over there, most of it, correct me if I'm wrong, Kyle, is you have to have cash, right? How
All
was
walls built.
cash was, you had to fund the whole thing cash, right?
Yeah, all cash, man. I mean, the truth is I've been a Bitcoiner since, I don't know, since Bitcoin was probably, around $2,000 or so. So I've been fortunate where, I had, I call it like fuck you Bitcoin money. I had, keyword had. Um, won't get into that story, but anyways, so yeah, I just had a bunch of Bitcoin and I'm like, this, and actually Thailand is a very crypto friendly country. And so, money can just move pretty freely with Bitcoin out there. And so there's just ways to, purchase things and pay people with Bitcoin specifically and pay the builders and so on. And I mean, you're absolutely right. You have to come in all cash. And I think that was, like once I really understood how you can leverage debt out here, like, I mean, I know this, but I knew that going out to Thailand, but now coming back here, I'm like, wow, I'm actually so grateful for the American system. Again, like I know there's a lot of people have opinions on it, but if you really know how to leverage the American system, like it is truly set up for, people to, I don't know, get wealthy in a sense, but
Mm-hmm.
you just have to understand the system. You have to understand how to leverage that. And, now since coming back, like I'm so big into like OPM, like using other people's money. And I just love just the fact that you can, do all these cash out refinances and raise money and use 0% interest rate business credit cards and, use your HELOC and like you can just access money from so many different areas and you don't need to use your own money. And in Thailand, I was using all my own money. I was basically spending my freaking Bitcoin. And yeah, I mean, what I spent probably almost close to $500,000 or something, just between purchasing land and, losing money on the with the builder and so on. And but yeah, it's just like that all that money had to be used and I wouldn't even have to use even more money just to build.
Yeah. Yeah. Bigger risks, right? When you're putting more money for all that and, you find one bad apple that kind of runs off with your money, you're set back. A lot of these countries don't have the 30-year fixed mortgages like we do here in the States. So I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
Would you ever
Thailand is
consider somewhere else? Would you ever consider going somewhere else, like another country in a different place?
honestly no. Like no. Like I would go and just maybe, like I don't know, I'd rent an Airbnb, you know. Like and we know too, like in this like culture, there's like investor girl Brit now who's like buying like in Belize and everything. And I mean, congratulations to her. Awesome. Like, I know some people that are, like, from a certain country or whatnot, but like considering again, I'll use the word like having a competitive advantage. Like I feel like this is where I have a competitive advantage in America. Like I don't need to go play in somebody else's freaking sandbox or whatever or backyard. So it's just like now that I've had the experience in Thailand, again, Thailand is a very nationalist country and it's very difficult for foreigners to do business there. And I thought again that I was ready for it. And it's just, I mean, even now since we left the island, like now they're like cracking down on all these like, with foreigners, you can, basically have your business, but it can only be 49% owned and then 51% Thai. So you basically have to have two Thai partners where one is 26%, the other one's 25%, and you're 49%. And they call them like nominee companies. So I mean, it's very common in Thailand, but now the government decided that they want to start cracking down on them. And everyone's like, hey, dude, like you left at the right time. You're lucky you're not here now. There's all this, news, in Thailand specifically about foreigners buying land and them like actually literally like trying to, take properties from people. and living with that dark cloud over your head. And that's actually how I felt out there. It's like there was this consistent, whatever dark cloud again hanging over my head every day of like, all right, what's going to happen? I'm always at their mercy. Like, what's like, like they could take my land at any time. They, the neighbors could try to extort me for something. Like, nothing gets done the right way. And, there's the mafia and there's so many different freaking elements out there. I'm like, no, like done.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fair. Are you going, which direction are you going in, Nico?
I was going to ask him because I know we spoke a little off camera about what I think it was a commercial deal or something that you're looking at.
Okay,
yeah,
we're on the same track. Go ahead. That's what I was going to ask.
First of all, what is that, and what are you looking into getting into?
Yeah, so now, like, thanks for asking too. I really love talking about iOS. iOS is industrial outdoor storage, and
not your Apple operating system.
Yeah,
iOS.
So what I actually like when I first dove into iOS, it was a few months ago, and I actually have a partner with what we're doing, and I'm more like I can raise money, and she's more like a data analysis. Like she's more data driven. Honestly, I'm not that guy, so I've been leaning more on her to just I don't know. Sure, all like the data and like like where all the best freight corridors and all those different things are at, the best cities to buy iOS. But ultimately, iOS again is industrial outdoor storage. My opinion again is just how Brandon Turner got into mobile home parks, 5 or 6 years ago, and nobody was talking about mobile home parks. AJ Osborne, self-storage, there's all these, people are now doing campgrounds and everything. Not many people are talking about iOS, and iOS literally just got its acronym like less than a year ago. And so I went down a rabbit hole of watching YouTube videos, ChatGTP and everything. And the ROI on iOS is freaking insane. So there's a strong demand for truck parking spaces throughout America. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like, I forget what the exact statistics are, but there's something like 1.8 million trucks on the road, and there's only parking for like 400,000 or 500,000 trucks. And then a lot of these yards, these truck parking spaces rent for $250 to $300 a freaking day, or not a day, a month. So think about this. Like, we just had a deal where we're actually going to buy this yard for $1 million. We're going to develop it for roughly about $400,000 as a 5-acre yard in Memphis, Tennessee. And we would get roughly around 140 truck parking spaces on there. And, even at, 70, 80% occupancy at $300 a space, it was in a great location, everything. That's roughly about $30,000 a month in cash flow on a $1.4 million investment.
Wow.
And so phenomenal. Here in California, if you buy a $1.4 million home, you're never going to get, $30,000 a month in cash flow. Ultimately, you see a lot of producing iOS yards selling for, anywhere from 500,000 up to $1 million per acre, depending upon, they do have different, grades in a sense. Like grade A is basically like everything's all concrete. You got bathrooms there, you got Wi-Fi, security fences everywhere. Bathroom and Wi-Fi. I think that's the big things. Grade B, everything's concrete. You have the security fences. You have a security guard, and that's pretty much it. Then grade C is maybe like gravel road, security fences, and so on. Grade D, probably no security fence, dirt road, whatever. So there are different grades of iOS yards, and with iOS, again, you can rent to truck drivers, because they all need places to store their trucks. Also, their rigs or whatever, the things that they pull, like they can literally just, leave it there for months at a time, their storage containers. And then also, you can do like RV storage, you can do, boat storage. One thing I actually like to share too, like one guy that we found on YouTube specifically, his name's Ron, forget his last name. Ron is a commercial real estate attorney, and he actually has been helping us underwrite our iOS deals. So we've been leaning on him. Like, he charges us $500 an hour. We get on a Zoom call with him. He helps us. He answers all these questions for us. And he actually owns 5 iOS yards in Dallas, Texas.
Wow. Okay. So is this because I've followed Investor Girl, Britt, and AJ. So is this similar in the sense of, are you looking for yards that are like mom and pop owned, that are maybe like C class, that you can that grading that you could then add value to it? Like what's your process for finding these places?
Yeah. So we're not looking for anything turnkey. Anything turnkey is, quite expensive and you don't have the value add, component to it. But ultimately, like that, we were literally spent about 3 months on this one yard just recently. And the thing is that we thought that we could get through the phase one environmental stuff that was wrong with it. And ultimately, like the county's just being really, really difficult. And so we just don't see it actually happening. But this was just literally like an old, I don't know, just ExxonMobil actually used it back in the 1920s. And then after that, like it was just another storage facility for some other things or whatnot. But for us to actually do everything the right way and get everything permanent, we would actually have to like get through this phase one environmental situation, which my partner, she was actually working on it more diligently than, I'm the money guy basically. So she would be more educated to talk about that. But ultimately, we're just hitting like a lot of roadblocks with the county. So we're just kind of moving on. But to answer your question, we're looking at something that we can develop. I think develop is where we can push up the NOI, the net operating agreement, or net operating income. And because we want to be able to do our cash out refinance, pay ourselves back, get a good loan on it, and then just simply cash flow.
Sounds like just like the residential side, right? It sounds like, anytime you're buying a property, you want to get it at a good price and with value add. But this may be a silly question, Kyle. What is value add on a plot of land like that? Are you talking about like building a different infrastructure? You're talking about
the concrete
subsurface?
roads and
Yeah. I share this often, just with real estate in general. Every piece of real estate has its own story. And it's up to you to create that story for it. Like there's nothing linear with real estate because like you don't know till you got the deal. You look at something like, all right, what do I got to do with this? Do I have to put in all concrete? With iOS yards, ultimately, you do want to put like for a B class iOS yard, you'll put 6-foot fencing with barbed wire around it. You're gonna have to have security gate access. You're gonna have to separate all the truck parking spaces. You're gonna have to pay somebody to maintain the yard as well too. Because truck drivers obviously are not the cleanest people. Like they like to leave tires and probably freaking, crash McDonald's and stuff behind. You get oil stains and all that type of stuff. So there is, there's simple maintenance that actually needs to happen. But ultimately, as far as what we're looking for, we're looking at old like junkyards. We're looking at anything that just basically has like a concrete slab on it. But ultimately, it's all about location as well too. It needs to have like good on and off access. You want to be in like a major metropolitan city. Well, if we're looking at Memphis, we were looking in Barstow, California. It's a big freight hub actually in California. Actually, I've seen iOS yards specifically, that are producing in major metropolitan areas, bro. Like they're literally selling for anywhere from like $6 million to $10 million a freaking yard. Like it's insane, But like again, every piece of real estate has its own story. A lot of those, yards might have 300 parking spaces, or they're in a really great location, or California, the cost of land is so expensive. And we were looking at stuff in Sacramento, and even just for fun, like in Los Angeles, like truck parking spaces go for up to like I think $450 a space or so. And you're like, wow, like when you run the cash flow, but then you actually look at what the purchase price is, you're like, I don't know how that one's gonna work.
Wow. Okay. So you're not buying like raw land off the highway either, or necessarily because you want to have some infrastructure like water, electricity, things like that. Because I assume, like you mentioned, you want to have power, you want to have Wi-Fi, you want to have plumbing facilities, and then I'm going to veer off into a slightly different question. So this is just for storage. These aren't like truck drivers that are coming in and parking and like staying on the premises. They're just parking their rig and storing it there, right?
Exactly. Yeah, they parking will work, but sometimes they just need to have simple access to whatever it may be. And truck drivers can actually sleep in their truck. Ultimately, and for parking, there's a whole culture of this. And actually, what's kind of cool too is that there's already like websites online like truckparkingwhatever.com where like truck drivers literally can just go online and book their parking spaces. So a lot of the tech is already set up. It's valuable to have your own website and have like a presence online. But ultimately, just like Airbnb or whatever, you can just go online and simply book your truck parking space. And that's how we've been kind of like analyzing, our underwriting our deals, where we're looking at how other, truck, iOS yards are actually performing, and like looking at what their, how many spaces they have available. We'll call all the neighboring yards, see what there's, see how much a space actually is, and we compare that with like what we're looking at. So yeah, that's kind of how we're underwriting the deal in a sense.
So would you ever
And
consider
actually,
leaving some of those spaces aside for, like, you said Airbnb, but this sounds more like this is more of a long-term storage lot for in most cases. But I mean, is there a facet of that where you could essentially have certain spots that a trucker could rent for the night, like an Airbnb? Or is that
yeah, I mean,
different?
like, yeah, so they do daily rates and they do monthly
Okay.
rates. And I think maybe, that's a really great question. And I never really thought about this because our goal is not to do we don't want to do the A class. Like we want to do the B class. And with B class would just simply be the, like concrete, concrete slab. We'll do the 6 foot, fencing with the barb around it. The security gate, have a security person on hand. And oh yeah, solar lighting. So basically all the lighting around there will have, poles with the solar lights. But probably just like a porta potty, that
Mhm.
gets cleaned out every week. And so that's, like I wouldn't want truck drivers, living the actual property, in a sense. And I like again, that's a really great question. I don't know what the culture of that is. I just know that they need a place to park their trucks, and that's what they do. Then usually they just carry on, and they live in the community.
Yeah.
I don't know, like this
Yeah.
does truck drivers do. It's the culture of it.
Yeah. Just a
Sure.
random question, because I know when I'm doing road trips, you see them pulled off to the side because they're tired, they need to sleep, and they're just like, okay, well, I'm just going to pull off on the side of the road and sleep for a while. And so I didn't know if that was like a subset of this, is like, oh,
Yeah,
you have a place you can go to. Because I know for RVs, it's like a Harvest Host or something. Like there's websites where you can, if you're RVing, you can basically get a subscription and be like, hey, I want to go to this winery and park. And they allow people to come park on the premises. In that case, you got to go buy wine and stuff and support the business. But I didn't know if it was similar like that. Okay, I'm good.
well, probably with the A class. I mean, we're not trying to do A class because that's like
Yep.
building like showers and all that stuff
Yep.
or whatever. And I've looked at some of the A class, truck yards, and they're pretty freaking, pimping or whatever. They look cool. Like wow, you can see all the things. They got great reviews online, so there is value. I just don't think that that's a direction we want to
It's
go
not
in for
yeah.
first iOS yard. But just like any investor, and especially a first time investor,
Mhm.
like I feel like I understand like residential real estate really well. And I feel like now going to commercial real estate is like pivoting over to like the big leagues in a sense.
Yeah.
And, I've been investing in real estate now for 6 or 7 years since like 2000-ish, I think. And yeah, it's just like, I'm just ready to do things that are bigger,
Yep.
I'm just, like a single family home space is cool. I understand it. Like, I feel like I can do it in my sleep now. I'm like, I'll continue to do it, but ultimately, like, I want to expand and grow and, do something different. And,
Yep.
so yeah,
It's
iOS.
Yeah, it's only natural, Kyle. You have your entrepreneurial mindset that, like, yes, you feel like you got the grasp, but you're ready to continue learning and grow to that commercial space. So that's awesome. We are running close on time, Kyle. So we always want to ask a few final questions. You have a great journey and a lot of learning lessons, a lot of wins. But what's some advice for, your younger self from when you were starting, or just newer investors that you would give to some advice that you would give?
I don't know why this one just popped up in my head. It's interesting. I think one of the biggest lessons I've had recently is actually like investing in my own ideas and not other people's ideas. I get people who pitch me on stuff all the time. And like, yes, partnerships are different, but I get people who just solely want me to invest in their actual ideas. And I have enough ideas of my own that I just feel confident that, that the things that I have going on, that's where I should put my money and stuff. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons I learned. Like I had a couple like crypto losses and a few other things where I invested in other people's ideas. And even, I didn't get in this story, but I was building 2 houses in Cape Coral, Florida, and the builder went bankrupt there. And I went through a company that's advertised on Bigger Pockets. And like, I felt like that was like all their thing or whatever. I didn't really have control over anything. And I like to be in control now. And I don't want to just hand money over to, companies that are like turnkey or do it for you or whatever. So
Yeah.
that's one of the biggest learning lessons I've had, the last few years.
Got it. And we always like to end with this question. How can Anna and I and our audience help you? Is there anything that you are looking to grow? I know you mentioned iOS, but is there anything that you need help with? For
Yeah,
your business?
I mean, not specifically. I appreciate that wholeheartedly. I mean, you can follow me on Instagram. Like I changed my name to Kyle REI Loans on Instagram. follow me there. I started my own mortgage brokering business about back in February. I do DSDR loans, hard money loans, bridge loans, basically non-QM loans. So if you're looking to get a loan on your first property, super stoked to do that. What I love to share with all my borrowers or clients is that I underwrite deals the same way that I would for myself. So like, I love analyzing deals with friends. Like, people call me all the time, just like, hey, I'm looking at this property. What do you think about it? Like, so just, like I love the structured deals with friends, and if that can help you get a loan with that, like, I'm super stoked about that. I also do 0% interest rate business credit cards and business credit as well too. And something I added to my portfolio as far as offering, helping people get money for their first deals. So I do have a kind of branch of my company that handles that as well too. So if you need money, you can definitely reach out to me. Don't be shy. Like, I love to just help people access capital.
Yeah. What doesn't Kyle do, right? He does it all. Can you say your social media one more time so we can,
Where can people find you?
Yeah. Where can people find you?
Yeah. My Instagram is Kyle at reiloans.com. Kyle REI Loans is my Instagram handle. My company name is fundstreamgroup.com or Fundstream Group. You can go to fundstreamgroup.com to see what we do. And again, like, any like non-QM loans, investment property loans, like, I can make it all happen.
Awesome. Well, that's going to do it for another episode of the Agent to Investor podcast. You can reach out to me and Garcia, official Nico Garcia, and you can reach out to Anna at
I'm @AnnaBylick_realtor on Instagram and Anna Bylick everywhere else.
All right, guys. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you guys.
That was so good.